Hello folks, and welcome back to my Cthulhu Mythos October that I'm dedicating. Hey, today I'm going to take a look at Henry Kuttner. Again, Henry Kuttner is a guy who has been in a lot of... He was a writer during the pulp era. He wrote in the Cthulhu Mythos. We'll be taking a look at his Bells of Horror. One of his stories that he's done with his wife, C.L. Moore, is in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame for short stories. Mimsy or the Borogroves. He is a prolific writer. He died at a young age, and his wife stopped writing. She lost the writer's bug, but the two of them were a tag team that would finish each other's writers. One of them would get up from the typewriter and so forth. He published a lot of pulp magazines. He was a contemporary of H.P. Lovecraft, in whose Cthulhu Mythos today's Bells of Horror is set. So let's go take a look at Bells of Horror. And get started. Bells of Horror is a fun story. I give it a 6 out of 10. It's written in 1939. It has a lot of fun elements to it. It introduces the Book of Iod as well as Zequation to the Cthulhu Mythos. It's very, very light in mythos elements. It's so light that they don't even have them. It's a story that's written like a mythos story, but it doesn't name drop like the Necronomicon or anything like that. And I think the story is better for that because it doesn't have those elements. It's added in and so forth, and the Book of Iod and so forth will be added in other things. But I think it allows the story to be the story and lets Henry Kuttner tell the story that he wants to tell with Bells of Horror. So let's get started with Bells of Horror. Do a quick little synopsis for you. Now, it's not a particularly long short story. Here in this collection, the Book of Iod, which was published by Chaosium, it's a mighty... let's see. The Bells of Horror starts on page 143 and ends on 161. So it's a mighty 17 pages long. That'll probably take you 30 minutes to read it, if that, for the first time through it. I've read it now for 3 times, and I've enjoyed it each time. And I read it for you fresh, so I'd be fresh with it and so forth. But basically what's going to happen in it, it's going to set the stage. It's set in California, which is a nice setting. It's a different place in the Cthulhu Mythos. And in the California setting, you're going to get these bells. These ancient bells are being brought back up so that they can hang in the Cathedral of Saint Xavier. And these bells have been lost to time in this thing and had to be dug out. They were found. They're by the California Historical Society, whom one of our characters is a protagonist of, and the CHS has sponsored a dig that's in the mountains and will undig these bells. When our protagonist is on the way to go find the bells after they've been unearthed, he sees this frog that's killed itself by blinding itself with its eyes out, and he then passes another person who is who's killed himself after pounding his eyes out and pounding his head against a nearby tree. They arrive at the cave. They find the bells and so forth. It's believed that a gas that was let loose from the cave has caused an irritation to the eyes, and thus people have been rubbing out their eyes and rubbing their eyes raw and tearing them out and so forth, and gotten tired with them, and thus the frog and the person are explained away as this gas that must have an irritant to the eyes that was unearthed as a part of it, so forth. So he looks up the bells in the Book of Iod, and the Book of Iod says that these are the bells of a demon named Zequation, and when hung and rung, they have this darkness that comes with them, and it will summon the creature that is sort of Lord of Darkness, if you will, and so forth. And so the bells have now been brung up. They're going to be hung in Saint Xavier. That's about halfway through the story, so I'll leave you there. What happens after the bells are hung in Saint Xavier, and so forth, and you'll find out if you check out Bells of Horror. I'll go ahead and finish up my synopsis of that in there and so forth. I'll link you, by the way, to my collection of the Henry Kuttner stories. You can get all of his stories in this one collection, which is there are 13 stories in this collection, and 12 of them are by Henry Kuttner. And it includes all of his Cthulhu Mythos collections and so forth. He was a correspondent with H.P. Lovecraft. He's a key member in the Lovecraft Mythos in Generation 1. The stories that are contemporary with Lovecraft himself, that this is a part of in 1939. It was published a couple years after he died in the mid 30s. And so it's still contemporary with that first generation that is much more lightly attached to the mythos. Generation 2, the mythos elements come heavy and hot led by August Derleth. But this is still the end of Lovecraft's paean, if you will. And so it comes near the end of Generation 1. It's fresh, it's well written, it's evocative. It does have a lot of its horror elements derived from gore and body counts rather than a more traditional sort of Cthulhu elements, which might be more in mood, atmosphere, and so forth. The Bells of Horror feels very different than your standard sort of Cthulhu Mythos Generation 1 tale for those reasons. You know, compare it, for example, to Frank Bellow and Aplong, The Hounds of Tandalos, which is an intellectual horror, or The Call of the Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft, which is intellectual horror. And in this case, the horror is more of it's gore, it's body counts, it's blood, it's viscera, heads are being decapitated, eyes are being put out, and so on and so forth. And it has a high body count. I enjoy the scenes in the darkness that I think are particularly well written and well done by Kuttner. So I give him plaudits for that. So again, it's fresh, it's well written, it's worth your time reading. So there you are. That's 1939's Bells of Horror, and I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read Bells of Horror? What did you think of it? Did you like it or dislike it? Did you agree or disagree with any of my points? I am happy to engage you with that further in the comments below. If you like this video, please feel encouraged to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be so many more of these to follow. And finally, hey, I just want to take some time and thank you for taking some time and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and our time is pulled in so many different directions, right? So the fact you spent some time and invested it in my video does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. It's very humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have a great day.